All right. So state your name for the record, sir.
Robert Richard, the one and only right here.
Good morning, sir. I appreciate you getting up so bright and early to accommodate. We had a good time yesterday. It was good to spend some time,
Yeah.
you know.
Yesterday we had our shoot for RH Gents. It was great. Out on the golf course. Top-notch golf course too. Trump Golf Course in California.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
beautiful. It was
yeah.
beautiful.
And it was a hot day too. It was like what 80 degrees yesterday. So it was
Yeah,
great.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a talent, it was an easy shoot, typically those things can go in a lot of different directions, but we made
Yeah. We've been very cohesive, so it's been good.
yeah, yeah. So look, man, I'd like for you to give us a little bit of background. First and foremost, thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate you sharing some insights with us. And so why don't you maybe just give us a little bit of background on you, how you got into acting, and then what you're doing now? Because I think there's, lots of mysteries about you that we want to unravel.
Yeah, I think it's probably like best to just kind of like set the record straight that I'm probably like more of a scientist than people realize. Like that, I'm from Los Angeles, California, and I went to a math, science, and aerospace magnet school for elementary school. So we had like a NASA sort of like component to our grammar school,
Mm.
and there was competitions to go to Kennedy to space camp, and I won that competition. So I got to go to space camp as
Wow.
like a reward for excelling in math and science. And then from there, I kept pursuing the NASA thing. I wanted to be a mission specialist. I ended up going to Huntsville, Alabama, for the Space Academy to do like actual like NASA training, and then tested into Johns Hopkins University for engineering at like 12 years old-ish, and started taking like my college courses then. So I
Wow.
was very, very, very much like
Ambitious.
a science kid. And
Yeah.
then, but I grew up in Southern California in the 90s, and it was just like gang life everywhere. And, I grew up in Crenshaw and I was a part of it. So it's kind of like had this like, didn't take class with any of my friends because I was always in like some other, math science thing. But then I was getting in a lot of trouble.
Mm.
And I was walking home in a rival gang's neighborhood, and I was outnumbered like 3 to 1, and I just kind of like dipped into like a side building just to kind of like outrun a bunch of other dudes.
Mhm.
And that happened to be an acting school, and that's kind of how it began. And I was just in there, just stalling, just being like, "Oh, like, what are you guys doing here?" But I was just trying to like, just cover my ass for a little bit. And so I ended up just like asking for a tour. I filled out a application just to waste time. And then they followed up and asked me if I really wanted to go. And I was like, yeah, sure. But I wasn't really interested in it, to be
Mm.
honest, because
Mm.
I didn't see myself in that lane.
Right.
But it's a lot of young people there. It was a lot of girls there.
Yeah.
So I was
That
like, all
made it
right.
that
So
made it easier.
yeah, so it was a faith-based acting school. It was called Faith Acting School, but like they're very much like acting with like God or like acting with like church.
Mm.
But I wasn't too much of a participant. It was like the first class that I did was 12 weeks,
Okay.
and I was probably about 5 weeks in, and I hadn't really participated at all in class. None of the games they played. I was kind of a wallflower.
Mhm.
And then uh, Miss D was the president of the acting school, and she asked me, "What are you scared?" I was like, "Scared." I was like, "Dude, if I get up and get on that stage, I'll be the best actor any of you guys have ever seen." And then now, sort of the rest is history.
So she said, "Go ahead."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I got up on stage, and we started doing like improvisation and code reading and scene study, and I just kind of like saw it more as a challenge. I was probably about 13 at that point,
Okay.
and then And then within about 2 years time, I brought this back.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, yeah, I told you I'll be the best actor you've ever seen in this school.
Wow. Wow. So wait a minute. There's a level of, she challenged you, and I guess you were like, yeah, I'll get up there. No
I'll
problem.
blow the roof off. I just, in any kind of challenge, I will blow the roof off. I that way with my friends, and that way with any adversary. I
Yeah.
just want to just like obliterate like the competition. And I
Right.
think that it's from a sports mindset. It comes from just like, healthy competition. I mean, like last year I was in a pull-up challenge with my brother, and I was able to do like 400 pull-ups in a day and doing like sets of 70 and 60 back to back. Like
Yeah.
I just wanted to just go overboard. And,
Yeah.
whether it's because of, the great athletes like Magic or Jordan, sort of like the level of excellence that we saw in the 90s, the Mike Tysons, the Michael Johnsons, all these different people. Like I was just very adamant of being like, if I'm going to do something and assign myself to anything, I want to like go overboard. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great, man. That's good. So she really, what was her name again? Miss Debbie?
Deirdre Weston, Miss D.
Miss D. So Miss D opened the door for you, basically.
Yeah, for sure. And then, I kind of like got after it. I was like doing a lot of entertainment in the 90s, like had a sports component.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the things that I was doing, like my character was an athlete, and I played baseball and basketball and football in Southern California. Right. And it was very, very competitive. LA was a very competitive city for sports. And so like Shaquille O'Neal did like a basketball movie that I got the part for that one. Then he did a baseball one. I got the part for that one. And then we did Coach Carter, and I got the part for that one. So there's a lot of stuff that was sort of like, I still felt like I was being myself and having practice and all these things to put in the movie, but then still getting to act. It was great.
That's great.
But then, then I started to stretch myself and do other stuff. So,
what's interesting is Coach Carter, I would say, because I know Sam, and I remember when you got casted for that movie, I was out here at that time.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I've seen that kid before. I remember saying that I seen that kid before, you know, and I think he really does play ball. Because like I was paying attention, someone who's also played basketball. I was like, some of these guys, clearly the scenes they cut pretty quick because they really don't hoop. Like you can tell, but you had a lot of like scenes in that movie where you had the ball in your hand.
Yeah.
You were running, and I'm like, the only way, like they basically said, look, we're going to put the ball in his hand, and a lot of these action and motion shots, Bobby's he has to have the ball.
Correct.
Because it's believable,
It was cool. Like, so the Sam thing was dope. Sam really had my back on the film.
Yeah.
So, I'm light skinned, so some at first. So the story is, Mike Toll and Brian Robbins were two producers, and I used to play basketball in their backyard on the weekends. They had like a little league they had with like, kind of like industry people. There's about 12 of us, and we played like 3-on-3 or 4-on-4 in their backyard. And they invited this guy down from the Bay named Kenneth Carter, and they were optioning his story rights for Coach Carter, but it was the real Ken Carter. So real Ken Carter, the coach, had all the records at his school. He could play ball. So I'm like D'ing him up. I'm like stealing the ball from him. He's like, you could actually hoop. He's like, you should play my son in the movie. I'm like, what movie? He's like, I'm getting a movie made about me. But there was no script. There was no cast. There was no nothing. It was like super early on. He's like, I think I'm gonna get like either Denzel or Sam Jackson to play me. So he takes my number and he calls me like 3 years later, and he's like, hey, I'm putting you in my movie. You gonna play my son, right? And I was like, I don't think it works like that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he was like, all right, I'm gonna tell Sam. So they didn't let me audition at first. They were saying that like how they saw Sam's son, they didn't see me as Sam's son. And they read a lot of people. I think they read like 800 kids. And then sort of like in the 25th hour, they didn't find the cast for Damien. So they called me back and they said, I want you to do a chemistry read for Sam.
Yeah.
So they brought me over to Sony, and I met with Sam and we did a scene together. It was the scene where I did tell him I'm gonna leave my private school to come to his public school.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Sam just said, like, he's cast. He's cast. He's
Yeah.
cast.
Done. I'm convinced.
Yeah. He's like, let's go to the Lakers game. So and then Sam had my back the whole film. Like,
Sam is a G, man. He's a G, you know.
Yeah, he is.
People don't realize that Sam transitioned early on from being in what I would consider to be culture icon movies to crossover mainstream, but he maintained who he was, you know, like Sam is like, this is me. Like, this is, and I'm going to give me to that character and I'm going to blow him up and you're going to love that character because I'm giving it to him, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I really, really, really admire him.
He's a legend.
He is a legend. He is a legend. I still have it in my office. I still have a card that Sam wrote me. It's pretty special. And he's like, here's my number. If you ever need anything, just call me, come to the house. I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's amazing. Yeah. So basically, walk me through, you know, what Hollywood. So your career journey, you know, your first big movie, show, and what that was like, and then just what your discipline, right? Because I imagine, you know, if you're competitive, there's probably outside of sports in the entertainment industry, there's no place that probably has the amount of competition that you're constantly meeting on a regular basis. So
right, yeah, I mean, it's a different beast, you know. So it's sort of like in the beginning, like I started to work with some of like the 80s greats. I work with like Don Johnson from Miami Vice. I work with Peter Gallagher. I work with Lou Gossett Jr. Lou is great. Lou's an Academy Award winner. He's just like a straight vet, you know.
Right.
And you know, I got to work with some great pop stars too. We did a movie called Light It Up, and it was like Vanessa Williams was in it. Forrest Whitaker was my scene partner. I had all my scenes with Forrest. Usher was in it. Rosario Dawson, all these greats. And Judd Nelson, who everybody knows, Judd Nelson from New Jack City. Yeah, Judd's cool. And so I really kind of wanted to like kind of go toe to toe with all these actors. And like, you know, it's a healthy competition, but I do want to like scene steal from them.
Right.
Like I want the audience to be like, he's like just dominating the scene.
Right.
Because that's to me when I think of like the Michael Jordan versus the Brian Russell type thing, where it's like, I have the ball and you were trying to stop me and I am unstoppable. Like yesterday, there was this clip from the NBA where Ja Morant, they throw the ball to him from full court, like 80 feet, and he catches it in the air and shoots it in like 0.8 seconds for the game winner and hits it nothing but net.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like, the crowd's going crazy and the spectators like, that's insane. It's possible, Ja Morant.
Right.
And I'm just thinking like, that's the energy that I want to bring.
Yeah, right.
And there's this other actress, Penelope Cruz, and she's in this movie called Vicky Cristina Barcelona, and she's in the scene with Scarlett Johansson. Everybody knows Scarlett Johansson. Everybody loves Scarlett Johansson. But Penelope Cruz just eats her up in this scene. She's like acting circles around her. Right. And then in the movie that really didn't get any coverage, Penelope still won Best Supporting Actress for the movie. Like she's the only one who won the award. And she had like one scene.
Right.
So like, I'm just like, you know, preparing myself, being like, I'm going to be next to like Leonardo DiCaprio's, like, you know, all these big greats and being on set with them. And they're going to try and eat me up. And I got to like, you know,
you're going to get them.
I gotta Kobe A. Jordan, you know what I'm saying? I gotta be like, yo, give me the rock. I'm gonna put up 50 right now.
Well, I'm gonna tell you the scene of you speaking to Sam and Coach Carter, because you don't hear kids speak that way.
Yeah.
You know, like you had comfort, the character had enough comfort and respect from his father to push the issue, but
Yes.
at a very high level,
Yes.
and the intention was, I'm not backing down, Pop. Like,
Right.
you trained me. This is how you raised me.
Correct.
Hey, I'm giving it
This
back.
is what I'm gonna do. This is why it's gonna be a win-win for both of us. Is basically how he addresses that.
And in that scene, you knew Sam was present, but it was your scene. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who he was, you own that scene. That was definitely your, in my opinion, biggest part of that movie, because the star of the movie was like, I don't know what else to say.
Well, the cool thing about the backstory about that scene was the director was just like on me tough, like because the director really didn't pick me to be in the movie.
Right. So
It was like Sam and the producer, so there was some button heads the whole film. And right before that scene happened, Sam told the director, if you don't lay off this kid, I'll have you fired tonight. I'll have you replaced.
Wow.
He's like, he's doing his thing. He's killing it. And what the funny thing is that me and Sam probably had like 8 more scenes that were like super, super going at it.
Yeah.
And they're all on the cutting room floor. They didn't make the cut. They didn't make the film. But Sam had that's why I say Sam had my back on that film. Like he was like, listen, I'm taking him up. I'm like big brother in this kid.
That's great.
Yeah, it was really special.
He recognized talent. And I think, for many of the people in the business who've been there for years, who understand how to embrace new talent, I think Hollywood in general, people in general, need that sort of, I won't say mentor, it's like quiet mentorship. It's like support. It's like, I'm behind this person, because I know you guys are looking at things from a totally different perspective, but from a craft and a talent perspective, I'm giving this guy my support.
And also too, I would say that, like, the relationship that those two characters had is the same as I had with my father. My father was military. My father was a stand-up guy. My father was essentially like the one powerful dad in the inner city in California. So I knew how I spoke with my dad, and I knew kind of how I was a little bit different than other kids, because other kids are like, their big brother is the gang member,
right?
Where I have like my present dad,
right?
So I was like, there's something that I know about this that is actually true to how this story unfolds, that every kid probably relates to in every inner city across the world.
Right.
Whether it be in France or whether it be in South Africa, wherever the movie meets across the seas, there are kids who are, hey, I'm in a community of kids that we're all kind of bad, but kind of good. We have good intentions, but we mess up. But then there's one kid who's like, I got to go home before the streetlights get home, because their parents make them do that.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm the consultant for that.
Not many people in this era understand, when the street lights go out, you better be home, man. Like, you would get a whooping if you were out there. And there was always those kids that was like, man, you leaving?
You chopping up. You got chopped up. Your phone got a little glitch.
Okay.
Yeah, but when the street lights get home, that I don't even know people know what that is anymore.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's something that needs to be brought back in some film somewhere, because it's such a big part of an era. Like, that was the alarm that said, if you are outside now, you're getting in trouble. Period.
Yes.
Nothing good is coming after the lights go out.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
So to date, what is your most memorable project that you've been a part of?
Honestly, I would just say all of them. I mean, I'm not trying to be like, it's just every single day that I'm on work, like, it's a collaborative effort. I come from like a team mentality. So, even though I do want to be the franchise player, I consider acting my sport. I do really, really enjoy everybody from like the quote unquote ball boy to the water boy, like everybody who's working in the crew. I really appreciate them being there, working hard with us. And a lot of times they get there before us and they're leaving way after us.
Right.
And, all the transpo guys, all the grip guys, like, I ended up like, hey, let me buy you guys a beer, chop it up with you guys, just like let you guys know that like I see you guys being, men on the front lines,
Right.
doing this. And then also too, like, I like the fact that, I've sat in so many different living rooms of
Mhm.
so many different people. Like, when I was a kid, I got bussed out to another school after being in the inner city. I got bussed to like, a school with kids from all of the races. And then when I was in my early Johns Hopkins programs, kids were from all over the world. And they'd invite me to come, break bread with them in their respective homes, whether it be for Shabbat or whether it be for any other thing that they're having.
Mm.
And so a lot of times when I'm in people's kitchens, which I think is the most that you learn about anyone's culture, is like if you're in someone's family's kitchen, you learn so much about what they value, who they are. And I've been in all these things. And so I take that to what I do, because when they're watching me, I want them to be like, what he just did,
Right.
like he just spoke to me secretly.
Right.
And I'm like, I identify with that. And I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great, man. That's good. So, having the start that you did from, call it a science point of view, what are you doing in life to continue that? Because I imagine, once those brain receptacles are turned on, they don't shut off, right? Like it's just so you see
Yeah,
things differently now.
they don't. So I called my brother on the phone and I told him about an idea that I had. And he told me that it couldn't be done. I was like, wait, what do you mean? He's like, you're talking about a technology that would be like a stalker technology. I was like, that's a great name. Let's just call it stalker. So I end up calling a mechanical engineer who used to work for the US Patent Office.
Mhm.
And I share with Jennifer Medlin my idea. And we went through a long process, but now I have a patent for mobile to mobile communication. And essentially it's a ticketing sort of application, but a
Okay.
little bit of like a Pokemon kind of gaming stuff. So it's like a stalker app for celebrities or anything of interest, but it's also a ticketing platform to bring people to a certain location. And
Nice.
so it works both in the 2.0 world, 3.0 world, and IRL in real life.
Okay.
So now I'm just, sort of like been building other businesses so that when I go to these venture capitalists and talk about my idea that now the United States government is recognized as, patent number 11 million, blah, 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 whatever my number is,
Yeah.
that it's that I have some acumen of running a business so that I could say like, hey, I want to push this out to the world and make
Right.
this, yeah.
Right. That's great.
So
That's
so
amazing.
I'm still doing that, and I got some other things up my sleeve too.
We have a limited amount of time, and I promised you I wasn't going to take up too much of your time this morning, but I want to bring back different episodes of this interview over the next couple of months, because the conversation we had yesterday morning, I wish it was recorded,
Yeah,
because it is so far ahead of where we are, yet so relevant to where we are. And
right.
the amount of the level of insight, and I would say the intellect that you were using in your questions and your vision in connecting dots about our future and our existence as humans, I think is such a very healthy conversation for people to have, because we tend to live our lives without understanding truly how we're connected to it. We're kind of just you use the term cyborg, and we talked about the matrix, and we're in the program, but we really don't know that we are. And so I'm going to leave a tidbit there, because that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, no, and I will say, just as a teaser for the next time we talk about that we're talking about sort of like where we are in the trajectory of where we're going, both like spiritually, consciously, and throughout the universe, into the multiverse, and in that connection with God and the Lord and what's written in the Word.
Yeah.
So I will leave that with people that it will anchor it with
I'm
the,
freeze framing that last clip because that's the one that we'll bring out again. That'll be the intro.
yeah, for sure.
So, all right. So tell us what projects are you working on now? And then give me a quick after that, just like a 2 minute on your recreational habits. Like what?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say that the project that everyone's watching right now, which is blown up, is Amazon Prime has this show called Harlem. It's binge worthy. If you watch the first 30 seconds, you're hooked. You're gonna be watching every cliffhanger and just consuming it all. And I play Sean, a single parent father on that, who's just trying to fall in love, and be the guy that every girl, every woman deserves.
Mhm.
And then I have a movie also called The Fight That Never Ends, where I play Jay Hunter, who's a Hoover Crip. And I grew up in 60s territory in LA, and I played this role. And I'm actually submitting it for the Emmy because I want to get another one of these to prove that it's not a fluke. And then I have another movie called Bolden that's out on Amazon too. It's amazing. It's about the guy who created jazz music. His name is Charles Buddy Bolden, one person who was a schizophrenic trumpet player in New Orleans in the 1840s, invented jazz. It's a story about his life. And I play George Baquet, who really, really challenges him and has a lot of questions for, does he really realize what he's doing? Basically inventing the downbeat for music. And then the things that I'm working on, just building other storylines right now, and really just trying to get ahead of it as far as where we're going in the Roaring 20s, like I like to call it, heading into the 30s. And then for my recreational habits, I like to get around the globe. There's a rap line says, I don't have a home phone number, I live on the road.
I live on the road.
Yeah, for sure. And whether it just be getting out, going horseback riding, scuba diving, rock climbing, I still hoop. Learning a little bit of tennis. I'm out on the golf course a lot more now. And I just really
I've seen your chip shot.
yeah, I'm working on it. But today we sort of like wrapped up Black History Month, and I heard somebody say the other day, like, what we gonna start talking about Black future? And I was like, that's something that I really see as like, hey, we're all in this together. We're all the sort of like true, classic American values that we're all trying to cohesively have together.
Yeah.
And we all have our own style and the way that we do it. And to be a part of a mission that says, hey, we're moving together to say, hey, there's certain things that are uncomfortable, and that's where the line of growth is.
Yeah.
So let's push into that and get on the other side of that. And that's where, you get stronger. You learn more about yourself. You learn more about what your bias is. You start understanding new philosophies. I think that's really, really special. Yeah. And to be a part of that and then be able to, wear that on my shirt, it's great. It's awesome.
Recreational habits, man. I appreciate you, dude. Thank you so much.
I'm a recreational habits gent.
Yes, you are. You are the spokesperson. You are the first guy that comes in to represent that. So
that's very, very, very special. I appreciate it, man.
No problem, man. Listen, brother, you enjoy the day, get some rest, and I'll hit you up in a bit.
God bless y'all.
All right, take care, man.
Please. All right.